Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Shankly Gates Podcast. I'm your host, Kieran, today, and I'm just joined by just Taran tonight, mate. How are you doing, fella?
I'm good. How are you, Kieran? Excited after the game today, yeah.
Yeah, man, not bad. Nice to see you. I've not seen anyone. Happy New Year to everyone out there. As Taran said, great result for Liverpool today. As expected, Shrewsbury at home, but especially with some good kids being played today. 4-1 win, fantastic. So we've got that to talk about. Of course, obviously, New Year, January means transfers, so we've got a lot to talk about there. And then again, big time of the season. Certainly, when you get past New Year, we've got big games on Thursday in the League Cup against Arsenal, and then what could be a tricky-looking league game against Brentford on Sunday. But first and foremost, Taran, today's game against Shrewsbury. I'll start off by sort of looking at the team that was picked. Really, do you think it was more a case of just who was fit, who wasn't, or do you think there was a bit more to it in terms of Jurgen's selection?
Yeah, I definitely think it looked like the players that were available were the ones that played. I think if you had the choice, I don't think Klopp would choose to play, Virgil van Dijk or Fabinho in a game like that. But I think at the same time, it helped us quite a bit, especially because we had to use quite a few of the youngsters that we had, quite a few that, hadn't got many first-team appearances, quite a few debuts in the side, and a lot of the experienced players that we had. One like Robertson, hadn't had that many minutes this season so far, and obviously in the recent weeks either. So it was quite good in terms of having that availability. We don't have that. It seems to be sort of the fringe players, but it was good to have the likes of Van Dijk, Konate, Fabinho, like I mentioned, in the team, because I think that sort of settled the rest of the young lads, and I think that's what really helped us build and ultimately get the result that we needed in the end.
Yeah, I think that's the case. Usually, I think, you've got a lower league side at home in the third round. You definitely wouldn't expect to see, certainly Robertson, Van Dijk, Fabinho, as you say, near the team. But I think it's just the way it is at the minute. It's just the players that are available. Obviously, the AFCON lads wouldn't have been available. I don't think they'd have played anyway. But COVID's hitting so many teams. At the minute. I mean, another league game went today. Everton Leicester in the week, so it just shows you. But obviously, the FA did come out in the week, didn't they, and say games have to be played, and if we can't, we forfeit the tie. So, but I thought the kids that came in did fantastically well. Have you got any that you'd pick out as someone who stood out for you as one to look out for the future, Taram?
Well, I think normally I've been quite reserved in sort of my estimations of Tyler Morton. I think in the sixth position that he's played, I've sort of been not convinced entirely by him, just because I think it's quite a bit of a step off when you look at Fabinho. I think physically he lacks a bit to play in that position. But I thought today, playing a bit further up than he normally does, I thought it was outstanding. To be fair, I think he was on par in terms of what he does. What Thiago does for the team in terms of bringing the ball forward, progressing, and sort of kept keeping the team ticking over. And especially when we had the ball for quite long periods of the game, it was quite important that we had somebody like that, especially when we knew Shrewsbury were just waiting to counter-attack and get the goal that they wanted. So I was very impressed by Tyler Morton. I think Kyle Gordon as well needs a mention. I think he was obviously outstanding. He gets a goal that he's wanted, and I think a few others that really stood out as well. Connor Bradley, I really liked him at right back. So it was quite nice to see a few of the youngsters as well, especially those that we hadn't really seen much of before.
Yeah, mate, definitely so. I mean, for me, there was a lot of hype around certainly Kate Gordon anyway, for his performances, certainly with the youth teams and that. But we'll touch on his goal, and I thought certainly wasn't just him. Obviously, Connor Bradley with the assist. Young Liverpool fullbacks with assists. It's just the way we deal at the minute, isn't it? And but the way only because it's not the best ball in, but the quick feet he shows in the box, couple of touches, and then not usually as a kid like that you just you throw throw a leg at it and just try and hit it. But it was a proper cultured striker's finish, wasn't it?
Well, I think watching the game and looking at the players, I think the big takeaway for me is, and I want to see what you think about this. Is you can look at the players, and I thought a few of them, Dixon, Bonner, Bradley that you mentioned there, Kyde Gordon. I think they've benefited, a lot from being in and around, the first team players, and I think that showed for me today. A lot of young and inexperienced players, Conor Bradley's position there would just boot the ball high into the air, and try and look for somebody in the aerial cross. But obviously, seeing he's got Trent, in training next to him, and he's probably been in and around the squad quite a few times. He plays that whipped ball that Trent, always loves to play and put it into the box. And then you look at Kyde Gordon, when you got the likes of Firmino and Minamino, Jota, that have that quick, tidy sort of, feet that they have in the box, and you see sort of those similarities. And I thought that was really refreshing to see, and I thought it was quite nice to see as well. Sort of, what Klopp's built at the club in terms of how he's progressing the youth academy into the first team. And I thought watching Dixon Bonner as well was almost like a carbon copy of Oxlade-Chamberlain in terms of box to box and, in the presence in the attacking areas as well. So I thought that was quite nice to see. And I think throughout the game and all the goals that we saw, you just saw like sort of parallels between our first team squad and the little techniques that they have, and sort of that being reflected into the younger generation.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, mate. I think that's what every club looks for. I mean, from the first team right down to, the reserve team, under 23s, under 18s, even, younger than that, you want to see each team playing the same way with the same, club values, same ethos. And, you can definitely see it there with, and especially in, when you play in these such games, which, don't come around too often, where it is a sort of mixture of, there's world class, international footballers there playing with kids who've played single figure games for the club, and the way they played, it like you say, it wasn't too dissimilar to like a first team performance. Obviously, sometimes the quality wasn't there, but you can certainly see the signs, as you say, the way Klopp works with everyone. There's no stones left unturned at all, certainly. But the only bad news, obviously, from the game, really, obviously the goal we conceded to go 1-0 up. I mean, It's wonderful for the neutral, team like Shrewsbury going 1-0 up at Anfield, fantastic for them and all that. But obviously, from our point of view, I think, and not too much, it probably, Conor Bradley should be, stopped the cross, but, and, an experienced man like Ibrahim Konate, for me, don't know what you think, Taran, but he just lets the ball go, doesn't he? I don't know if he's unaware of, Udo, I think the lad who scored, where he was, or if he thinks Van Dijk's going to cover it, but I don't think he covered himself in glory there at all.
Yeah, I think that's a slight downfall of playing with Van Dijk sometimes. I think you can almost rely upon him too much, and I think that's what Konate was sort of, it sensed that that's what he was doing there. He has a quick look over his shoulder just before the ball comes in and sees that there's a player there. But I think by that point, it's just too late, and he hasn't covered enough ground to cover that front post. And I thought that, he was played very well today, and I was very impressed with him. But I think positionally does struggle a bit, and I think that will come with time and sort of consistency and, getting a good run of games. But I thought as well, you could tell that he was relying quite a bit on Van Dijk today, which normally he sort of plays on his own and he sort of, just carries himself quite well. But today it seemed like he was a bit shaky, especially in the early parts of the game. He seemed to settle down later on, but especially for that goal, you would have expected him to come across the front post and cover it. And I know you mentioned Bradley there, but like you said, Konate's a much more experienced, and he's playing next to one of the most experienced centre halves next to him. So you'd expect him to do a lot more there. So I think, that's sometimes the limitations of having Van Dijk next to you. When you got someone so good, you almost think, they'll do all the work for you. But luckily, we managed to pull the game back and go ahead and win the game.
No, exactly, mate, because arguably you'd make a case of that being the starting centre-backs for, many Premier League games. It's not like the League Cup tie against Leicester when you had, Billy Koumetio and Joe Gomez, and, you could understand mistakes there, and, Vardy and Maddison pounced on that. But, it is disappointing because, at the end of the day, arguably our first two, choice centre-backs, and we've let, a Shrewsbury forward or Mark 6 yards out score. So a bit disappointing from that point of view. But no, we did what we did. We kept the ball loads. And, just a little question I'll throw out there, Taran. Have we found Mo Salah's new penalty? We've found someone to take his penalty taking abilities with Fabinho. Is he the answer after, Mo's couple of misses lately?
Yeah, well, I think Fabinho at Monaco, he didn't miss a penalty when he was there, and then he came to us and he took a few, and he missed quite a few of them, from what I can remember. So it was just a bit of bad luck, and I think it seemed like Salah went on to take the penalties and just wouldn't stop scoring. So, but obviously the penalty today, the composure, he just slots it right past the goalkeeper, and I think it's nice, especially when James Milner eventually departs the club, and a few of the other senior players. It will be good to have someone of his quality as well, of Fabinho, to take penalties like that, because it's always those little things, I think, extra edge. But I think, yeah, it'd be great to have Fabinho deputising. But problem is, you can't really kick Salah off penalties because, one, I don't think we're too happy about it, and two, I think he normally gets them all in. So I think we'll have to bat Salah for the time being.
Yeah, but absolutely no chance, especially when he's sitting proudly at the top of the Golden Boot race as well. There's absolutely no chance. I think he'd have to miss at least another two before.
You'd have to sub him off. He might even come back on and take the penalty, knowing him. He was that eager to take it.
I know. I think for the time being, no, but he certainly stepped up there. And, international play, you'd expect him to score, and he did there fantastically. Then into the second half, obviously a player we all love to see on, especially when you're at the game. There's such a buzz. It doesn't matter who you're playing, but obviously when Bobby comes on, there is that buzz in the crowd. He gets people on the right edge of the seats. Gets certainly that's the Bobby Firmino #9 song going, which for me that gets the crowd more than any song that gets the crowd going. And obviously he gets his goal today. Cheeky fair. That's a Bobby Firmino finish, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we've come to expect of him now, and I think it's really nice to see him back. I think we've missed him quite a bit in terms of his presence in the side, and also his playing ability as well. I think Jota has been unreal, but I think when he comes off or when he needs a break, Firmino is always there, and he always puts in a really good performance. And we can't forget that Firmino's brought us this long way. Him, Salah, and Mane, they were the originals, and it's sometimes I think when Coutinho left, we might have lost that little bit of flair, but then Firmino comes in, you think, right, that's where it is. And it's just a shame sometimes that I think he doesn't get as much game time. Maybe that's through injury, or obviously this season it's just because Jota's been unreal. But it's always nice for him to come in and play. And like you mentioned there, I think everyone loves Bobby Firmino. He's just absolutely unreal. So it is very nice to see him. And he did look, obviously it's against Shrewsbury and they're a tough opposition, but he looked like he sort of had a bit of more of a skip in his step. He seemed like he was a bit more hungry. And I think that's just down to the fact that, he knows he'll be called upon quite a bit in the next coming weeks. And, I hope that he keeps up this good run of form and, scores a few more goals as well.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, because at the minute, certainly with Salah and Mane away, we need the players to be hitting form at the minute, because we've got very few important games coming up, and obviously without our two of our three talismanic front three, you do think we could struggle, but. So certainly having Bobby back, Jota's consistent this season.
Yeah.
It makes you worry less, and that I think that's what we need. We need those players, because we all knew this was coming. AFCON, because we didn't make the transfers in the summer, which we'll go on to talk about in our next little bit. But it's just good to have those players ready, waiting, scoring goals, and we're going to need them. And I think we are going to, if we're going to win any silverware this season, I think we are going to need them, certainly over the next few weeks. But anyway, I would like to move on. Just as I mentioned there, we have come round to January. It is that time of year again. There are certainly some teams out there that are doing a lot of business. Certainly at Aston Villa, the way they're going at the minute, obviously getting Coutinho in, reading on my phone today, the favourites for Luca Digne as well.
Yeah.
They're, Gerrard's really making an impact there. From our point of view, Talon, I don't know what you think about this. Obviously, we spoke a lot in the summer about a certain position, which for central midfield.
Yeah.
And getting, for me this year, where we've struggled, I think, is central midfield. A lot of people have, maybe had to go to defence because we've conceded a lot of goals this season. We've thrown away a lot of leads. I don't think it's necessarily the defence. I think the Chelsea game showed it, the Spurs game showed it, the lack of depth in the midfield there, and just how big a loss Gini Wijnaldum is in there, and the fact we didn't replace him. So for you, mate, Do you think, A is centre mid, the place where we have to, strengthen, that we need someone? And if not, where would you be looking? And, how important is it that we get some people in if we are to win trophies this season?
Yeah, I think it's quite disappointing. Like you mentioned, we spoke a lot about it in the summer, and the need sort of the issue that we have now is we have to keep up with Man City. We know their spending habits, and we know the quality of personnel that they have, and they've built a team now that can just keep running, on its own. Maybe a few more additions, but they've bought youth, they've bought experience, they've got everything. The team's just a well-built unit now, and we're looking at a Liverpool side that quite a few of the players are pushing in their prime careers, but in the next few seasons they will be sort of looking to move on, or they may be retiring. And I think that is a big issue that we've got with Liverpool, and it's quite disappointing that we haven't really reinvested at all. I understand our sort of principles and philosophies of sell to buy, and we're not going to be the club that spends stupid money on stupid players, as we've mistakenly done in the past. And I think it's been wise, and it's been sort of fruitful for us. But the issue now is we get to a point, and it seems like it's a recurring thing. We look at last season where we were unplayable until Christmas, and then all of a sudden it just all the wheels fell off. Whereas Man City just seemed to keep on running and keep on getting better. And I think that just comes down to the fact, and I think it'll be the similar case with Chelsea as well, is that they've just got much more depth. And the issue with that is we haven't got that. And the more players that get injured, I think on our day we've got the best, first 11 in the Premier League, and they perform the best. But the issue is when one of them goes and one of them's injured, then the step off is just way too big, and it really hinders us. And you've mentioned there that the midfield has really been lacking this season. I think I've noticed quite a bit is that sort of void that Wijnaldum left, and I think I was quite upset with Wijnaldum when he was at our club. I didn't think he did much, and I always thought he was quite a negative, neutral player. But then he leaves, and you look at the midfield now, and you think it's got a bit more flair, but it just seems to be missing a bit of, I don't know, sort of versatility, sort of, I don't know, sort of strength, you'd say, really. And that's what sort of he brought to the team, to the midfield. And I think looking at Henderson as well in the past few games, the man who just run up and down the pitch and cover everyone's sort of areas of weakness seems to have been lacking that. And I think that's where we've been caught out, really, is when Trent goes forward and there's that gap in behind and he can't get back. And normally Hendo was there to cover, but it just seems that he's lost a bit of those legs, maybe because of how much he's had to be used in, this season and towards the end of last as well. So I think that's one big issue that we've had, and that's a big problem we've had in terms of signings. And I think this transfer window, it's looking more and more likely that we won't fill that void, which is quite disappointing again. It comes around every year, and that sort of optimism that we had before just seems to sort of dissipate quite quickly. And I think that it's quite disappointing when you think that Klopp's built this side from, the real rock bottom to where it is now, and he's not really getting the funding to excel to where the point where he needs to be, and where I think, Liverpool fans and the team deserves to be as well. So definitely I think midfield is an issue that needs to be solved, if not now, then definitely in the summer. But also I think the attack is a big issue for us as well. Obviously we've seen that, AFCON players go in. We know how good our attack is. We've seen how good they are. But then at the same time is when they go, one person goes. As good as Minamino has been this season, Origi stepping in the Wolves game, we don't have that competition, especially in terms of Mane. Mane is number one on the team sheet every week because no one else can play in that position when Jota is just unreal through the middle. So how do you solve that? It sort of brings someone else in. But then the big problem we then have is who wants to deputise and sit on the bench for half the season when you've got three unreal attackers playing week in, week out. So I think that's a big problem that we're having this transfer window. And I think, it's a problem that Klopp and sort of the ownership are really struggling to solve.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going back to Gio Wijnaldum. I enjoyed him at the club, and it never more so the fact what I've seen this season. Just what one thing more than the other, the way he kept the ball, the amount of time, it kept coming up in the Chelsea game and the Spurs game. To us, we couldn't keep the ball. It was every time we got it, it was 3 or 4 passes, but then Chelsea got it back, and it was just. it was just bewildering because it was time after time again.
Yeah.
And, thinking back to other games where we've dropped points, that's what was happening. The Brentford game, Brighton game, it was that time and time again. And it's not going to happen this transfer window. I mean, I did sit here before we, sort of stopped doing it for Christmas, and I was positive going into it,
Yeah.
thinking, we could match City here, but you obviously still believe, but like you say, City's squad depth, and I think ever more so in seasons that are dictated by COVID, basically, because 17, 18, 19 of the teams are not putting out a very strong team, whereas Manchester City are the exception.
Yeah.
And I think the league table does reflect that. So we're not going to bring a centre mid in. It's, for me, looking at the way it is now, I think it's a bit late anyway. And even if we did, it should have been done in the summer.
Yeah.
It wasn't. We relied on the likes of Naby Keita, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. Obviously, Harvey Elliott would have played a lot more. That was obviously very unfortunate. He's on his way back, which is great news. But it's just one of them. It is a little bit frustrating. We are still a fantastic team.
Yeah.
I'm not being down at all. I still think we can have a very good season.
Yeah.
I think at the minute, I think it'll take a monumental effort to get past City, even if we go there and win, which I'm still confident as was doing, because we'll attack any game. It's just the amount of points that City get is out of our control. But then obviously we move on, as you say, Talon, to the forward players. Maybe one name which has come forward this week certainly prominently is Luis Diaz of Porto. But obviously, that obviously comes at a price. I've been, was it 60 million? I was reading. Yeah. You think about that. You think, great sign and all that. But the way we run, 60 million. Have we got that money to spend if he comes in? Is someone going the other way?
Yeah.
I mean, we have spoke, on this podcast before of, when the front three does go, who goes first. So I don't know what your feelings are on Diaz. If you've seen much of him play for Porto, I think he's a good attacking player, and you could do very well for us. But A, can we afford him, and B, if we can't, do we have to send someone the other way?
Yeah, I think he's a really good player. Obviously, the times we played Porto, I don't think does him justice. Obviously, we know how much we love playing Porto and how much they'd hate playing us. So, he's got a bit of quality. I think we saw in the games that we did play, does miss that sitter that he has, but he has a bit of quality. I saw the other day he'd set up the last minute winner for them the other night. So he has got a bit of quality, and he seems like he's an exciting player. But 60 million, that's not what Liverpool are gonna pay, and we haven't seen that in a long time for Liverpool to pay that much for a player. So you can sort of sense that that's not really the case. As much as he'd be sort of a really good signing, and I think it's almost a luxury signing at this point. I think we saw last transfer window when we were desperately in need of players at centre half. We didn't go for a sort of luxury signing. We almost went for a what we could get at the time, and obviously Ozan Kabak and Ben Davies. Poor Ben Davies didn't really get a chance, but Kabak did a really good job for us. But that seems to be the Liverpool way at the moment. But I think what's quite frustrating is then why hasn't somebody already been sort of organised? And I think the greatest worry then comes to the fact that when you look at it deeper is the fact that Michael Edwards is going to leave at the end of the season. The masterclass that he's done so far at the club. So when you look at it, when we need that depth and when we really do need that signing, when the AFCON players have already gone, they'll be back by the time we probably sign someone at this rate, which is quite disappointing then. But then where are we in the league? Where how many points we gained, how many points we lost? And I think maybe that's Klopp's sort of vision is why spend money now when we can sort of muddle through and sort of see it through until the AFCON players come back. But the issue is then where are we progressing as a team for the future? How are we going to build then if we're just sort of doing and focusing on the now? And I think that's a bit of the issue with where we are now is it seems to be very focused on the current situation as opposed to looking ahead to the future. And I think that might be an issue come to that point where we've got a very aging squad, all getting old, close to retirement, all at the same time, and we haven't really brought, any new sort of middle-aged talent to come in and play in this team. So as much as I like Luis Diaz, I highly think it's unlikely for him to join, but it would be nice to have somebody come in who, not like, Jota didn't seem to be happy to play a sort of squad role. He knew he wants to make that position his own. So it'd be nice to have someone with, a bit to prove. I always sort of point to Adama Traore because I think, he's just electric. And I think that, when you've got someone like that in your team, it always scares opposition. I think it would always be a great option to have, come off the bench. And I think, Klopp could mould him into the player that, everyone thinks he could be. So that's a name I like to offer into the ring. But I think we do need to bring somebody in, but I highly doubt it'll be Luis Diaz.
Yeah, you are right. It's we don't deal like that, do we? The two times we have, they were absolutely certain it was going to work.
Yeah.
And, Alisson and Van Dijk 100% have. So unless they were absolutely certain, which I don't think they are.
Nah.
Yeah, I don't think that's on the. I don't think that's a go there. Just on Adama Traore there, electric pace, but for me, he lets himself down with the with him being on the ball. It doesn't make the right decisions, but I don't know what you can say. Anyone can be coached and improved. I mean, we've got one of the world's best coaches there. If he can't do anything, I don't think anyone else will. So that's one thing. But I honestly can't see us as much as we have to sign someone. It's just classic Liverpool. We're nearly a third of the way through, and nothing really.
Well, I think what we mentioned the other night was that if there is going to be any business, it will be either sort of pre-contracts for the summer, players towards the end of their contract, either clubs trying to get a bit of money for them in this window, or it'll be they'll come in the summer, sort of like what we saw with the Cater deal. But that's a big issue then, isn't it? When we need the players, we don't normally have them, and then come the summer, it will sort of be, do we really need that person in that squad now? When I think that's what happened with Cater really. When we needed him at that time, he was still on loan for another year, and then when it came round to it, sort of he didn't really fit into the squad straight away because we'd sort of developed. So I think if there is any business, that might be the only way. I don't know what you think.
No, I think it is the more Liverpool way of doing things, isn't it? I mean, am I right? Is Mbappe's contract out in the summer?
Been swapping for Origi, two of the best players.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? Goals for goals. But no, I agree. That's the way we work. Sort of, I think Liverpool have signed two of the best free transfers you could ever have in James Milner and Joel Matip. I think the business we did there, sensational. That's the way we do things. So I have to agree with that. That's the way we go for it. Or we'd go for he does like a sort of relegation choice. I mean, if Newcastle go down, I mean, I'd have Alan Saint-Maximin all day long if they go down. So that that sort of a sign, he probably wouldn't come cheap, but there's no way he'd stay in it if they went down at all. So they're the sort of signs we'd be looking, those sort of 5, 10, 15 million pound players that come into like a Tsimikas who's have a look for a season or two, but then this season, as you can see the development there, he's ready-made replacement for Robertson. Basically, he's the neck and neck of who you choose there. So that I agree, that's the sort of sign we go for. But it will be the summer when we do business, and with that being the case, it just it points because first and foremost we want the league title, and just the way it looks at the minute. We'll always believe we'll go to the end, but just statistics and common sense would say it's probably pointing in Manchester City's direction. But coming away from that, Taran, anyway, because it's not all about the league. So obviously we had the FA Cup today. We're in another competition on Thursday, the League Cup. Well, we finally get round to it after the postponement last week. Where for you, Taran, does the League Cup sit, especially when you get to the semi-final stage? I mean, you look at it, you're a two-legged tie away from a Wembley final.
Yeah.
Where would you sit here? I know it's not a normal season, so it might be dictated that the team that gets picked is the players that don't have COVID. But
Yeah.
would you go quite strong? Would you go, you know, less strong, better sort of half and half, kids and first teamers? How would you look at it, especially with the league game just 3 days after it? Where how high a priority do you see this game?
Well, I think you've got to be loyal to the people that got you there first and foremost. So I think it'd be a disservice to not have the likes of Kelleher and Minamino, the players that have got you there, Ox, players like that. So I think if they're available, if they're back from any issues and injuries and stuff like that, it'd be good to see them play. Arsenal are always going to put a strong team out. Obviously, them losing today, they're going to want a strong reaction out of that cup. They're going to be desperate to get through to the final of the League Cup. So they'll put a very strong side out like they did today. Obviously, like you've mentioned, there COVID issues. You don't know. Obviously, for kickoff today, we didn't know who was available and who was going to play. So obviously now we've got a better idea of who is available, who can play. But with the league in mind as well, you can see the likes of Van Dijk probably not playing, maybe Fabinho not playing, give him a bit of a rest and at the same time, be ready for the weekend as well. But I think you've got to play experience maybe a bit more than we normally do. I think I'd expect probably Simicast to go in. Maybe Milner comes in. Henderson might come in. I don't think he'll play Jota just because he's our only sort of striker at the moment. But I think it'll be good to see sort of the fringe players if they're available to play. But also it'd be nice to see the likes of Kai Gordon, who sort of impressed today, and Tyler Morton to play as well. Because I think we are only, like you said, a two-legged tie away from Wembley. So I think, as much as Klopp really doesn't like the Carabao Cup and sort of he disrespects it to some extent, but at the same time, I think he values the fact that it's an opportunity to play the youngsters and give those, that don't normally get a chance in the league to play. So I think with that in mind, he'll stick to that, but at the same time, he'll want silverware. So it'll be good to see a mix, I think, but I don't think you can go full strength.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I agree with you. The fact that that's how Klopp's used the competition ever since he's come here, really. But for me, just looking at it honestly, this is Liverpool's best chance of silverware this season. I think when you get to this stage, I think I know it. The lads that have got you there, the lads that have gone through the rounds, played Norwich, Preston, Leicester, got you to here. I understand, but I just think, you get to your semi-final. This is, it's Liverpool Football Club. We need, we're here for trophies. This is one of the greatest teams we've ever certainly I've seen in my lifetime. Probably the same for you, Taran.
Yeah.
And it would be fantastic to back it up, with trophies. I think to get to this stage, obviously, the class of Arsenal, sit fourth in the Premier League, ran City really close in the league the other day.
Yeah.
I honestly wanted them to win today because obviously defeat them because they'll be right up for it.
Yeah.
Thursday night. So I just think, but we did pace them 4-0 at Anfield. It was a slaughtering, to be honest, that night. I know we can't put the same side out because of COVID, African Cup of Nations and all that. But I just think whoever's available, I think he's got to try. For me, I'd go with the strongest 11 possible. That that's how I see it. Just in terms of greed and winning trophies, and I understand you've got to keep squad players happy. You've got to give people game time. I don't things are maybe written in contracts that people play cup games. That we don't see from the outside. So we try, predict these teams, but you don't know what sort of team's going to, come ahead. But I think this is our best chance of a trophy this season, certainly getting this far. I mean, I think with the first leg now being at Anfield, obviously it would have been at the Emirates, but it was changed. I think you can go slightly weaker than if it was the away game, just because that crowd, they give you the extra 10%. So if you're going to rotate in any game, it would be this one, especially you can make it up in the second leg. But it's one that we can just wait and see. I don't know how you feel about the game itself, Taran. Obviously, it being over two legs. I don't know if you agree with that, whether you want it one leg or not. But do you see it? What type of game do you see? Do you see a normal Liverpool Arsenal sort of, free flowing where there's loads of goals, or do you see it like a semi final? It being quite cagey. Is Arteta going to try and take a draw for them? Be a fantastic result.
No, I think Liverpool Arsenal's always sort of a free flowing encounter, and I think it'll be the same way. Both of them really want to win. I think Arsenal are absolutely desperate to win, so they will, they'll be up and out for it. But I think as well, it'll be a good experience for the players to just sort of, have a semi-final. Not many of them, especially the younger ones, have been involved in a semi-final. But I think as well, the two-legged sort of, extent of it, as much as it plays into our favour from time to time, especially in the Champions League, I think especially in the cup competitions like we've seen, in the previous rounds and we've seen, today as well, I think it's much more exciting to have, a game, obviously the Leicester game as well. You think that a game then, 3-3, normally, it might go to a second leg tie, and it sort of drains the excitement out of the occasion. So for it to go to penalties, I think penalties is one, the most exciting sort of formats of football that you can watch. So, and also the most horrible too. So I think having that is really what football's about. But I think obviously, two-legged ties more for probably say TV as opposed to, the actual fans and the enjoyment of football. So it's one of those, it's quite difficult because one, you get redemption if you do play badly in the first game, but at the same time, you sort of lose that enjoyment of football. So it's a difficult one, but also when you think about it as well, it's an extra game in the calendar as well. And I think Klopp won't be very happy about that, so especially in the COVID season we've had and rescheduled games and you don't know who's going to be able to play one week, the last thing you want is extra games. So I think it is a shame that, it's not a single leg tie, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, I think apart from like the last couple of seasons or so, it's always been two legs.
Yeah,
That's just the way it always has been. But yeah, it just needs to change. I mean,
yeah,
it would have been interesting if it was one leg because it would have been at the Emirates, I think.
yeah.
And obviously we wouldn't have been able to fulfill that fixture. So I don't know if I assume that game would have still been at the Emirates. So I'm unsure. What do you make of that? By the way, that we've got the first leg at home now instead of Arsenal having it. Did you not see what? I don't know why Arsenal couldn't be at home this Thursday. I know we had the second leg because that's how it was drawn. Are we being unfairly punished for not being able to field the side last week, or are you
I
not
think
too
it's just
bothered
one of
about it?
those, isn't it? It seems like sometimes people talk about an agenda, but I think it's just one of those things where, it just seems a bit like a lot of other teams have had issues, fielding players and fielding aside. But I think it seems more of a courtesy thing now that, we can fulfill the fixture. And now it's sort of like, okay, you can have the sort of the home the home leg for the second tie. And obviously, I think Arsenal will be cherishing that because they know how important, Anfield is as a second leg. So it is a difficult one in terms of, you desperately want, it to be at Anfield for the second leg. But, I imagine Arsenal and those in charge will have been wanting it to be sort of switched in terms of the fact that they've been inconvenienced. So it does feel like it's quite unfair, but at the same time, not being able to play a fixture is just one of those things at this sort of point. So at this point in time, so it's a really difficult one to say.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of nonsense. I don't know why they
Yeah,
can't switch the fixture, but that's the way it is. I mean, the way
yeah,
away goals aren't a thing anymore, so
yeah,
you don't have to worry about that. It's just getting the best result over two legs.
yeah.
So obviously wish us the best, the best of luck for Thursday. Let's hope we can ideally as a home game, so win the first leg, take a lead there, and then that should play into our hands on the counter attack. And anyway, we've got one more game to look forward to anyway. This busy week, Taran. We've got what I think is a very interesting game on Sunday,
Yeah,
especially with
definitely.
the lads that we don't have. Playing Brentford at home. I mean, obviously because we play Thursday, we have to play Sunday. And I mean, we do play a lot. Like today, the Shrewsbury game a lot to 2:00 on a Sunday. It seems to be the new Saturday 3:00 these days. But obviously thinking back to the reverse fixture in the 3-3 draw. Can you see a similar game to that, Taron, or do you think it's a lot different? Brentford are a lot further into the campaign. They've got a bit more experience. The game's at Anfield. How do you see this one going? Do you see it, another attacking game, and do you see them causing the same problems they did back in the reverse fixture?
I think they definitely could. I think just because of the fact that, we might not have our first choice personnel. I think it might be in terms of the midfield might be a bit makeshift. We don't know who's available yet. Obviously, Thiago, Klopp's mentioned he won't be back for a bit now. And obviously a makeshift attack as well. So it could be very interesting. Obviously, Brentford they've had quite a few close games this season. They gave Chelsea a good run out as well. So they're a really good side. And obviously, last time we saw, sort of how good they are and the difficulties that they cause. And I think that was really the sort of the first point where we noticed that Liverpool were having a bit of a problem this season in terms of retaining leads and, keeping the score sort of in their favour. But I think, hopefully we've got enough players come back. Not too many COVID cases. Hopefully, the squad that comes out on Thursday, is a bit of a mix, and we've got a bit more sort of, we've got a few more senior players back, but also we've got enough players back to field a really strong side on Sunday as well, because I don't think you can sort of discredit Brentford or anything. You want to put a strong side out, and, although, it looks very unlikely that City will sort of give up this lead in the title race, you still want to keep winning every single game that you can, because you never know what can happen. So I think it'll be a very good game, and I think it'll be a very interesting one as well.
Yeah, man, I know when we talked about saying, not that we'd give City the title, but how, unlikely it was to, chase them down. But, you think, obviously, City play Chelsea this weekend.
Yeah.
And you just think to yourself, well, if Chelsea win now and we beat Brentford, all of a sudden, we get 3 points closer.
Yeah.
And you never know. But I do see it being a tough game. I mean, I have said that I will play the first team in the League Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Then, but obviously we have to play the first team next Sunday, because the league is the bread and butter. That's the priority.
Yeah.
So, to me, I don't think I'm not. I think all Brentford's games against the big teams have been at the Brentford Stadium though this season. So it'll be interesting to see how they go for me at one of the established top four grounds.
Yeah.
I think of the top four, they've all played them at home this season. They haven't played one away. So I think we'll be the first, and I think it'll be fascinating to see what they do, because they don't seem like the type of team to sit. But then again, I do think they've got for a team that have been promoted, a good defensive record this season.
Yeah.
They don't concede an awful lot of goals, and they are good going forward. Ivan Toney's not set the world alight, but it's not just with his goals, his involvement, his movement. Him and Mbeumo up front, he cause teams a lot of problems, and he certainly caused us problems in the game earlier this season. So, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, where do you stand on where we are in the league? I know we've touched on it, but obviously in terms of the title, this is a must win, isn't it?
Yeah.
If we are going to do if we are going to get anywhere close, we have to pretty much. Do you think we have to win every game from now to the end of the season?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think at this point, you sort of got to forget everything that's gone before. We've dropped quite a few points. We haven't been at our best. We haven't won games that we should have won. But I think now the big thing is you've got to hope that Chelsea beat City, and we've got to beat City as well. And we've got to be pretty much flawless now and until the end of the season, pretty much, in order to have somewhat of a chance to catch this City team. Maybe they have an act of God, and they lose half their team through COVID, but I highly doubt that will happen. They had that sort of scare towards the early parts of the season, so it's a really difficult one in terms of catching them now. But you just got to keep winning every single game. You can't really control what anyone else does at this point. It's just win every single game that you can, get every point that you can, and just hope that we stay as injury free as we can to perform at our best with the best players that we've got. But yeah, definitely winning against Brentford. I think it will give everyone a confidence boost. I think it will highlight, even without Mane and Salah, we can perform and score goals. And I think that's the big worry now is, will we be able to score the way that we have and create the way that we have without Mane and Salah? So that'd be interesting to see. But I think it'd be a big statement if we do win against Brentford.
Yeah, I agree too. I think it's a huge game, and I think, like you say, with no Salah, no Mane, obviously the two goal scorers at Chelsea.
Yeah.
Where the goals come from, we're going to look, definitely look at Jota. Definitely look at Firmino as well. That'll be interesting. Can you play? Obviously, if you play them both, you're going to play Jota from the left. But we know how good Jota is through the middle, so that's one to look at. But I'm just, before we go, asking for a score prediction for Brentford, mate. It is a tough one. What are you thinking?
I'm going to go for a 2-0 to us.
Clean sheet, yeah?
Yeah, our back is for a clean sheet.
I wouldn't be too sure. I do think Brentford have got a goal in them, but I think goals will be hard to come. So I'm going to go 2-1 myself. One of those games, classic Liverpool, where we put, don't play as well. Hopefully they surprise us. We win 5-0, but that'd be great.
That'd be nice. Flashback to the start of the season, winning 5-0.
That'd be fantastic. But one of those where we might have to sit in, keep it tight. But more than anything else, if we do get in front, stay in front.
Yeah.
Because the amount of drop points is killing us. Jamie Carragher said in the Chelsea, I remember, 17 times we've been in front. We've only got on to win 12. That's not good enough. That's good enough to finish fourth, not first. So that, that's one thing that we have to do when we get in front, stay in front. But anyway, thanks to everyone for watching. That is all we've got time for this week on the Shankly Gates podcast. My thanks to Taran. Good to see you, mate. Thanks for being on.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Yeah, I imagine we'll be back next Sunday, I think, when we'll have, obviously, Arsenal and the Brentford games to talk about. And we'll look ahead to the second leg. And I think it's West Ham in the league after that as well. So plenty to talk about. But as ever, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you soon.